Hey, what's up? It's Comic95 the Savior, and for this video, I will be giving you 10 tips on how to make more money while teaching English in Japan. So this video is going to be more realistic, and this is not about how to get rich, but rather how to increase your salary for those of you that are struggling and barely getting by. So a lot of people have this dream of coming to Japan, and you might think that the only way to make money here is by becoming completely fluent in Japanese and thus working some sort of other job. But as I've made other videos talking about this, the reality is most of the other jobs that are available to work, including translation and government-related jobs, contrary to what you might see people claim online, the salaries for those positions are very low, if not the same, as what you'd be making as a teacher. Not to mention that you normally need to go through a lot more hoops just to have a different job title, while your pay is either going to be the same or very similar. I've noticed that people that do translation work or government-related jobs are only working either part-time hours or their salary is good in comparison to teachers, but not by much, just a couple hundred more or basically the same amount if you had a better teaching position. So with that said, I'm going to obviously tell you that, as you can already guess, most of this video is going to be common sense advice, nothing special magical that you've never thought of, but just putting it out there for basic knowledge for people that seem to not know, like I personally didn't at some point. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 1, in no particular order, the most obvious thing that you need to do is get job experience. A lot of people want to make more money, but they have no prior teaching experience to bring to the table. You can't expect to find a job that's going to pay you, 350,000 yen per month when you have no teaching experience, you can't speak Japanese, you aren't a native English speaker, the list goes on. Now, don't get me wrong, there most certainly are people here that fall into all those categories and are making well over 500,000 yen per month. But those are the exception to the rule and not the rule. Just like those people that claim to be working some government job that nobody knows about, that they're allegedly making, 700,000 yen per month. How many people in Japan do you think are going to be able to do the exact same thing? Pretty much no one, if not only a handful of people. Thus, it would be unrealistic for me to give you advice telling you you can go ahead and, become a meteorologist in Japan or, be a lawyer or do whatever else. Like, yes, there are people here doing those things, but let's be real. What is the likelihood of you getting a job doing that? Pretty much zero. Everyone cannot do that. It's very hard to get jobs in those type of fields, and they generally do not pay much, nor do they offer secure full-time jobs most of the time. But this video is not about what you can't do. It's more so to help and encourage you for things that you can do. So yeah, get your foot in the door, get some teaching experience. That might mean accepting a lower paying job to start with, but the job experience will be worth it in the long run. It most certainly was for me. Most of the jobs that I had starting off here in Japan were not only low salaried, but they were crappy positions in which I was dealing with verbal abuse on a daily basis. I felt super stressed out and overwhelmed at work, but it's thanks to working all 6,000 of those jobs that I'm now getting the salary that I do get. I also have tons of experience that I would not have gotten had I stayed at the same company, but that's for a later point in this video. Long story short, don't be afraid to, apply for jobs that seem beneath you, so to speak, that aren't necessarily what you were looking for, as well as, teaching jobs in general. You can't expect to go from a job, where you were cooking burgers and then you want to get a position as the principal of some university or something. Like, you have to work your way there, climb your way up the ladder, and be willing to put in the work to get there. Number 2, consider getting a teaching certificate and accept any opportunities for professional development, even if it means traveling somewhere else. So as always, as I've said before, no, having a teaching certificate will not necessarily help you land a job, but it will help when trying to choose between 2 different applicants. For example, if you are going up against another American applicant, they're going to be looking at what sets you apart from the other. For example, do you have a relevant degree in education? Do you have teaching certificates? Do you have any type of, job experience relevant to the position? Because realistically, you do not need teaching experience, but it is preferred and wanted. And the reality is most people applying for these jobs do come with experience already. Thus, while the position may say, entry level, no need, you most certainly do need it. Unless they are desperate and dealing with high turnover rates, they are going to expect you to have some experience. And if you don't have prior experience, you are not going to be getting a good salary. They will try to lowball you and give you the bare minimum that they claim to offer within their ad. So do you keep all of that stuff in mind when applying for these jobs? Number 3, make connections. You don't necessarily need to let everybody know your intentions in leaving the company or getting, higher salary, etc. But do be sure to keep in contact with, employees that leave the company and or any type of, management that you did like, anyone that likes you, your letters of recommendation. Talk to people, especially people that are from the same country as you if you are not a native English speaker. They know where to find jobs. They know people who know people. They have friends. They know about different communities and networks, etc. within the city that you're living in and or within this country. They can help you get hooked up. This is particularly true for people that are from the Middle East and or that are from South Asia, such as India and or the Philippines. This is super, super helpful for you because despite the fact that you might be a native or near native level English speaker, you are not going to be classified as one due to your accent and country of origin. Thus, you will be dealing with a lot of discrimination, etc., and preferences, which I do understand to a certain degree why they want to hire an American over you per se. But we're not going to go into that. I've made another video on that topic. My point is that by having connections and friends of people from your home country, they can help you find a job because maybe there's a place that they know of or a friend that they know of that, hires people that are not native speakers, or they have a friend who is running their own school where they can help you get your foot in the door by giving you a job at that company and thus, giving you a visa to stay in Japan longer without you having to do anything illegal such as a sham marriage. But that's all a whole nother story. My point is make connections, because by having connections too, let's say that you're friends with somebody that plans to quit your job. What if they go on to start their own school and now you can kind of be a co-founder with them? They'll pay you a higher salary than what you're probably getting at your current job, and you can help them, start up their company. I've actually seen this happen twice since I've been here in Japan. I know that this happened a lot more than the times that I've personally experienced. I've actually interviewed for a job. I honestly did not get that job, but where that was definitely the case, where the guy that, started his own school, he hired 2 of the people that he was working together with. They all basically quit together, started their own school, and made their own business that way. So yeah, you don't have to necessarily be the one to start your own business, but you most certainly can get yourself a new position with a much higher salary just from having been friends with someone else. This doesn't necessarily just have to be the people that you work with, but it can also be people that you run into at parties, at church, at whatever type of club or organization that you are a part of, any meetups that you go to. Be sure to make connections with other foreigners and Japanese people alike. You never know who is going to be able to offer you a better job, a better position, and or some, work experience. It doesn't necessarily have to mean quitting your job and working for someone else. It could simply be an experience for you to get some, volunteer work or do a part-time job. But just because you've worked at that other place, now that's added to your resume, you are now worth more money in the eyes of a good employer. They will see that all as prior work experience, history, and be like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. They're worth more money. I should pay this person more. They will be a valuable asset to my company. Number 4, I know you don't want to do it, but you've got to move away from Tokyo. A lot of people, for God knows what reason, come to Japan and they are just set on staying in Tokyo because that's where all of their little hopes and dreams are supposed to come true. And don't get me wrong, I used to be exactly like you until I fell in love. But realistically, staying in Tokyo is a huge mistake if you want to make money. Unless you're planning to be some type of model, actor, actress, or whatever, Tokyo is not the place to make money for a lot of different reasons. For starters, oversaturated with foreigners and oversaturated with schools. Unless you plan to start your own daycare or something, which even then that could be difficult and expensive to do and less profitable for that reason, Tokyo is not the place to be in. If you leave Tokyo, there are not only a lot more jobs available, but the jobs also pay significantly more, and there's also significantly less competition. I've talked about this before in another video, but this gives you the best opportunity to not only gain more work experience, but to get paid more for less experience. For example, in Osaka, it's very easy to find a job where the starting salary is about 270,000 yen per month. Whereas in Tokyo, this is more so on the higher end. In Tokyo, I would say the average job is generally somewhere between about 2,200, 2,500, and anything above that is considered as nice and or a bonus. Even the jobs that advertise higher salaries in Tokyo oftentimes pay their employees less because they'll use you don't have enough experience, or yeah, you have a degree in education, but do you have a master's? They'll just find more and more reasons to pay you as little as possible. Not to mention, You still have to deal with their high taxes, more expensive groceries, etc., as well as the more expensive, cost of living with your housing, etc. So yeah, but of course you do save on transportation, but that's another story. So yeah, do keep in mind that if you want to get paid more for less experience, you would generally have to move outside of Tokyo. You don't have to necessarily live in the countryside, but you can most certainly get paid more there than anywhere else in Japan. But even going somewhere like the Kansai area, such as Osaka or Kyoto, most of their jobs pay more than jobs that are available in Tokyo. And now my phone is ringing. So I will ignore that. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry. Had to get that out of the way. Every time I try to make a video, my boyfriend calls me. All right. He's calling again. Okay, so anyway, where was I at? Sorry, I got distracted. But yeah, so I was telling you, move away from Tokyo. Even just being in the Kansai area, Osaka, the salary is higher here for teaching and it's less competition. But even if you're living somewhere like Osaka, you should probably consider moving somewhere more remote, such as like the Shiga area or somewhere out in Nara, etc. Okay, sorry, my throat got dry. But anyway, going somewhere further out into countryside-ish areas, not necessarily countryside, like Shiga is not really country, but it's borderline country, basically. There's nothing there. Going outside to areas like that are places where foreigners do not want to live, do not want to travel to, do not want to work in, and from the school's perspective, the schools have no competition because they're so country-like. There aren't a lot of English schools, and thus parents cannot pick and choose, which school they want their kid to go to. There's a limited amount of English schools, but English language is still needed. So with that said, they can afford to charge more money, and parents have no choice but to oblige and, pay the costs, even if the school's complete, utter trash. So with that said, they want to pay their teachers more because they want to retain them and keep them. And on top of that, they can afford to do it because they're charging more tuition-wise. Now, don't get me wrong, some schools are reasonable and still cheap, even although they have no competition. But at the same time, schools know that foreigners commonly quit their teaching jobs. Thus, normally a school that's out in a remote area, they're going to pay more. You can generally get a job that starts at like 280,000 yen per month and goes upwards to as much as 350,000 yen per month, because again, their goal is to keep you as a teacher. So yeah, also work hours tend to be better too. They're more reasonable. It's not very common to find a job that's in the countryside, if you will, that's going to ask you to work on a Saturday or ask you to work late at night. They normally have you, working shorter hours for more pay, and generally you get your weekends to yourself, have all your holidays and everything else. They want you to be happy and authentically enjoy your life and your job, working with them and living in Japan. So yeah, sorry, kind of got ahead of myself. 4 and 5 are pretty much the same. So basically 4, apply for jobs outside of Tokyo, don't just stay in Tokyo. And 5, as I said, consider applying to jobs in countryside-like area. And then next, moving on, number 6, you want to actually negotiate your salary. A lot of people just accept whatever job salary that they've been offered and don't consider, trying to argue and fight for more. So for example, if you have several years of teaching experience, do not allow a job to lowball you and say, well, we're going to pay you $250,000. If they're paying everybody that same salary, how is that fair to you? You're a native English speaker, you're from the US, you've been teaching for 4 years, that's all you're going to pay me? Why am I getting the same salary as, that guy from whatever random country that cannot speak English at a native level? That's not fair to me. I'm not only a native speaker, so I'm an asset, but I'm also an American, which I hate to say that, but it's the preference for teachers here. And they're also the least likely to apply for a job. They also tend to quit the easiest too. They're harder to keep, but they're what the customer wants. Parents want American teachers. They want American accents. They want American slang, knowledge, etc. Which as a non-native English speaker is very unlikely that you have that. And even if you can pass for being an American, well, you're not. And thus they're not going to lie and pretend like you are. So you bring value to their school and you want them to realize that. To be honest, I should already realize that. But if they're not, negotiate, ask for more. The worst that can happen is they say no and or they decide not to hire you because of that. But let's be real. If they're not going to hire you because you tried to negotiate your salary, do you really want to work for that crappy employer? No, you don't. Find somebody else that totally understands your situation, that totally understands that you are worth more money, and that offers you the salary that you deserve from the start, where you don't even have to negotiate for it to begin with. Number 7, this is something that people don't often think about, and it's not always an option, but consider negotiating your work hours. For example, some jobs want you to work, Tuesday to Saturday, whatever, or Monday to Saturday, and no, not Monday to Saturday, Tuesday to Saturday, and then you get like Sunday, Monday off, something weird like that. Yeah. Don't be afraid to negotiate and say like, hey, like, look, I can work Tuesday to Friday, or I can even work on Sundays, but I gotta have Saturday to myself. Consider asking for shorter hours. Say, okay, I could work on Saturday, but only in the morning or only in the evening, whatever the case might be. And the reason isn't just to give yourself free time, but rather to allow you to work for another company. If you're spending your entire day working for another, for one job, it makes it impossible for you to make additional income by working a second and or a part-time job. Now, of course, ideally, you do not want to have to work 2 or 3 jobs, but we're being real here. This is Japan, not the US. The salary on average is lower for everyone, not just foreigners, not just teachers. Regardless of what field you're working or what nationality you have, you are generally speaking going to make significantly less money working in Japan than you would in the US. However, the trade-off is things like housing and transportation are cheaper to being entirely paid for. And same thing goes for things like healthcare, but we're not going to get into that in this video. However, my point is, if you negotiate your work hours, it gives you the option to work additional hours, whether that be a side gig that you have on your own teaching English, or even working on something like a YouTube channel or blog, or working for another school. Thus, if you combine those 2 salaries, I had to clear my throat, you would generally make a lot more money than you would have been making just working for that one school, one company, one whatever. So it can be worth it to actually work more than one job, whether it be 2, 3, 4, whatever you can fit in. But do be realistic. It might look better on paper to say you have 2 or 3 jobs and seeing that you're getting, salary from 2 different companies, but do the math. If you're actually losing money by having those shorter work hours, it's not worth it to have 2 jobs, but sometimes it is. For example, you might have a job that only has you working from 8 to 4 o'clock. Okay, well, you might be able to find another part-time job that only teaches, business English classes from 5 to 7 that pays, I don't know, $30 or $40 an hour. That would obviously be worth it to do those 2 separate jobs. However, if your job is asking you to work, I don't know, from 9 to 6, and they're paying you 300,000 yen per month, and you say, oh, well, I can only work until 3, then they cut your salary, and you're only making, I don't know, 260,000, 250,000, or whatever. And this new part-time job is paying you 120 or 150,000 yen per month. That is definitely not worth it. That was not the better deal. You're not making more money by working for that other company. So I'm bad at doing math. You figure it out. You get what I mean. Basically, do the math yourself and see, are you making more money by having 2 jobs, or are you actually losing money? If that's not the case and you're not making more money, don't accept it. But if you are making more money, then most certainly consider working 2 or 3 jobs. Do it. And again, be careful with how you ask about negotiating your salary. Well, not your salary, but your work hours. You don't want it to be super obvious and be like, oh yeah, I want to work a second job. Because the reality is most jobs do have you sign your contract. You're not supposed to be working a second or third job. Most companies do ask that of you. So you do want to be careful how you, negotiate your hours per se. But do what you gotta do what you need to do. I'm not gonna give you advice on how to do things illegally, but I will say that, well, I'm not gonna try to, but I will say that, you do want to think long term. Do you really want to always have to work this job that has you working random shift hours, where one day you get off at 6, one day is 3, one day is 5, one day is 7? Do you want that, or do you want stable set work hours, so that this way when you have time to teach your own private students, when you have time to work for another company, etc.? Do you want to give up your Saturdays working a job that's only paying you $2,500 a month? Is that worth it when you could work a job that pays you $300,000 plus per month, where you're only working Monday through Friday until 5 o'clock? Think about it. Number 8, know where and what to apply for. For example, a lot of people, have their own preferences on what type of teaching they want. I know that I do. Personally, I don't like ALT jobs, but I have friends that only like ALT style jobs. You cannot apply for a job as an ALT and expect to get international school teacher salary, unless you happen to be in the JET program. But even then, there's a lot that goes into that I'm not going to make a video on right now, at least. But yeah, it totally depends on where you're working. So you really need to do some research on the company that you're working for and the position that you're applying for. That all has a lot to do with the salary that you will be given. If you're working a job that doesn't require a lot of independent work on your own end, you're normally going to be getting paid a lot less money. For example, an ALT does not have to do all of the work by themselves in most circumstances. You're working together with a Japanese teacher that truly controls the classroom, in which you kind of support and help their lesson by basically being the puppet of the class. You do have other positions as ALT, such as at elementary schools, where you are pretty much the teacher, but at the same time, you're not the homeroom teacher. It's not your class, it's not your desk. And with that said, you don't get paid like you are the teacher. You're also not as valuable. You are easily replaceable. So keep all of that stuff in mind when you are choosing to accept a position. You really want to research the position that you are applying for to begin with. You're generally going to get paid more money if you choose to work as an international homeroom teacher at a international school, but those jobs are also more competitive and more difficult to land positions in and or at. However, they also tend to offer set hours, set and flexible pay, and they give you yearly annual raises that make sense. You get more vacation time, etc., than you will at a regular Japanese public school. But that is just in my own personal experience. I am not, the god of information on that, but I'm just saying that, you need to know where to apply. For example, there are going to be schools that are more prestigious and uppity in your area, and thus they pay more money. For example, if you do research on international schools in your city, you will see what schools are considered to be the top. There's always going to be the bottom feeder, lower level schools that are international schools, but they pretty much accept everyone. You want to apply for a job at schools that don't accept everyone, that have entrance tests and trial lessons for new students, and that just do way too much for kindergarten, preschool kids. Those are the jobs that you want to work at, because if they're going through all of that and they're willing to turn down money from badass kids that are disruptive and don't speak English or can't follow instructions, you best believe they're going to have the money to pay you. Because if they're willing to turn down money in exchange for keeping the model look and behavior and English level at their school, they're most certainly going to be paying you well, versus a school that is just getting started, that's desperate and has no curriculum, has nothing going on, and just accepts everyone. They're more than likely going to pay you that way too. So be very careful of where you choose to work at. Same thing goes for Eikaiwa style schools. Ironically, as weird as it sounds, generally schools that are run by foreigners tend to pay more in the Eikaiwa world than ones that are run by Japanese people. And I believe this is because they know what it's like to work that type of job, and thus they want to, handle the retention rate and try to keep more teachers. So yeah, just my observation, my own experience, but basically know where to apply. So know what are considered as good schools, know what kind of position you're applying for, and choose, which ones you believe are going to pay you the most. The good thing about jobs in Japan is that salaries are listed on them. You don't have to blindly apply for jobs like how we do in the US, and you have no idea what you're going to get paid until you're offered the job, which is typically after you've already done 2 to 3 separate interviews and phone interviews and reference checks and everything else, just to find out the job is only going to pay you minimum wage. In Japan, right up front, straight off the bat, in most cases. The worst case scenario you'll have is you might have a job that has a range of what salaries they offer. That does happen. But still, at least you have an idea as to what they're going to offer you. For example, you're not going to apply for a job that says they pay between 250,000 yen to 320,000 yen and they end up getting 180,000 yen. It doesn't work that way. So that's one good thing out of all of this mess. Number 9, as I kind of already said earlier, get a relevant degree. I know it's like, oh my God, that's easier said than done, which is true, but you can always go to school online. It most certainly is worth it to get a degree in education if you plan to stay in Japan long term and you plan to teach. Even if you don't plan to be a teacher, whatever field you plan to get a job in here, it's worth it to be able to truly call yourself a professional. You will be respected more by Japanese people and your customers, even if you were to start your own school, own business, whatever. It seems so much better for you to actually know what you're talking about by being able to say that you have a relevant degree. Japanese people are not American. They're not European. They don't care about your little BS politically correct. You don't need a degree to be smart type mentality. In Japan, you do. And when you don't have qualifications, you get treated like you don't. I don't make the rules. I'm not here to reinvent them. I'm telling you how it is and how it works. And with that said, it looks a lot better. Plus, it puts you in a position where even if your business fails or you don't get to start your business right away, at least now you're in a position to get paid more working for someone else because you do have relevant experience and you do have a relevant education. So yeah, it's a win-win situation. And last but not least, number 10, know when to quit a job and or when to decline a job offer. One of the biggest mistakes you can make anywhere, and especially here in Japan, is choosing to continue to work for the same company just to say that you've been there for X amount of time. You're only going to get older. You're not going to live forever. Your life isn't going to last forever. Your age is going to increase, which will hurt you, in the work world, especially if you're a woman, as far as applying for and working at jobs in Japan. And with that said, you most certainly do not want to waste your time. Your time is money. Your time is valuable. And if your job is not going to pay you what you deserve, they're not giving you the hours that you want, quit. Find a job that will give you that. Same thing goes for offers. Don't be afraid to decline a job offer. If a job is trying to lowball you and they're paying you less than what's advertised, or they throw in extra stuff they didn't mention before and you don't like it, quit. Simple as that. It is thanks to me going against the grain and doing things that, are shamed upon, both by Americans and Japanese people, switching jobs a lot, that has gotten me where I am right now. If I stayed at the same job, I couldn't give you guys the advice that I'm giving you right now. I wouldn't have the money that I have right now. I wouldn't have met the people that I've met as of now. Like, there's so many things that would not have happened, all because I quit my job. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, countless times. I've been fired, I've quit, I've moved, I've done everything. And because of that, I have all of this work experience. I have the ability to give you guys advice. The list just goes on. So again, it's worth it in the long run. For me, time is money. And what one job doesn't appreciate, another will. Literally, the first job that gave me my visa, they treated me like trash. Immediately afterwards, I worked the best job I've ever had in my entire life. So one door, closes, another opens type mentality. Do not cry over spilled milk. Do not try to make and force something to work that's not going to work. It will generally, ultimately work out in more money, because even although you're leaving that job, you're not leaving with nothing. You're leaving with newfound job experience. You're leaving with new certifications. You're leaving with professional development. You're leaving, potentially with a new reference, depending on how you leave that company. So yeah, don't be afraid to say no to a job offer. Don't be afraid to quit your job. You will find another one. Of course, if possible, it's always best to have another job lined up. Don't just randomly get up and say, oh, I hate my job. I quit today. You guys made me angry. Don't be like me. But at the same time, life happens. If it does, you don't have to leave Japan because of it. You can and you will find another good job. So that's that. I'm done with this video. This is my common sense basic advice. Basically, long story short, make connections, and, improve your resume, get yourself job experience, do professional development, consider working jobs that don't pay you a lot, but that gives you a lot of experience. That doesn't mean working for bad black companies, as they're called. Do what you have to do. In the long run, it will be worth it, because all that bad experience will result in good money later on. Sometimes it is worth it to, work more than one job. People might bash you because you shouldn't want to work more than one job. It's too stressful, it's too whatever. But when you have the money to do whatever you want to during the time that you do have off, it will be worth it. You don't have to work 2 jobs forever. Just for as long as you need to get yourself together. It might be as long as you need to until you find another job where you can work one job that pays you the full salary that you want. So yeah, that's that. Thank you so much for watching. These are my 10 common sense tips on how to make more money teaching English in Japan. Don't be afraid to leave Tokyo, move somewhere else, consider working a different position. Do your research on schools and companies. They do not all pay the same. They are not all alike. There are definitely major differences from school to school, company to company. Thank you so much for watching. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at comic95 and Twitter at comic95 as well. I also have a Snapchat, Comic the Savior. I always forget. It's in the description box below. Excuse me if I misspoke. And it's at the end of this video too. You can read my blog for more advice there too. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Comic95 the Savior right here. And as always, I also hope that you'll watch another video. If you have anything you'd like to add below, any advice on making more money in Japan, teaching English, no scams, normal, real, legitimate advice for teaching English, please leave a comment down below. Share with my subscribers and other people that might be watching. Maybe you can help them out. Maybe you might be that connection, that plug that they need. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.